Welcome to this episode of the Soul Quest podcast. Today we're joined by one of our practitioners, Amy Dave. Amy Dave is a transformative psycho-spiritual therapist, domestic abuse specialist, and self-love soul journey intuitive coach. She specializes in helping people let go of their toxic shit and guides people on powerful inner journeys of personal transformation to bring you back home to yourself. Amy has a foundation degree in person-centered counselling, has done a clarity certification training. She is a senior practitioner and registered member of the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. She is also a self-love coach and psycho-spiritual coach. Welcome, Amy.
Well, welcome. I was going to say welcome to you, but yes, thank you very much for having me today. Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Well, thank you for joining us. And today we're also joined by myself, Rebecca Emily Raab, and Anne Bayford, both of us being the co-founders of Odyssey, the platform. And we'll be interviewing Amy today. Okay. So, Amy, we're going to dive into how you've gone through your journey and how you've got to the point where you are this amazing therapist and guide for other people. But I really want to just dive into your story. And part of the reason for that is because some people won't know anything about you. And as different therapists know, we attract different types of clients, and we attract different types of clients through understanding our own journeys and experiences that we've been on. So when we were looking into your bio and things that we already know about you, where we want to start is we want to start at the moment that was a really pivotal moment in your life. We want to start at the moment that you describe as rock bottom. And from reading your bio, this is when you were 26 years old, that moment you describe as rock bottom. So my question to you, Amy, to start off with is, who was Amy Dave at 26?
Wow. What a question to start with. Oh my gosh. The first thing that comes to me is she was lost. She was very, very lost. She was an Amy, a version of me that I was a mum. So I was a mum to two very young children at the age of 26. I was in a very abusive relationship at that point as well. And when I look back, I feel really sad for that girl because she was a girl at that point. She was young. She was in this space of feeling like this is just how life is. This is how it's going to be forever. I'm never going to get out of these situations. I've got two children, which is a massive responsibility, and they're about to go through exactly the same cycle that I went through as a child. But there was also this fire in me that when I look back, I can recall it now. I didn't feel it then, that something had to be different. Like I couldn't give them the same experience I had. I know that I was strong and I had courage and determination. Again, I wouldn't have seen it then, but I struggled. I was really, really just very, very lost at the age of 26. Yeah. And I got to a point where I almost had enough. Like life didn't make any sense to me. And it was just like, what is the point of carrying on?
Because it's interesting because when I was reading your bio and I interviewed you to write that bio, so it was interesting because you did speak about 26 years old was you were, am I right in saying, ready to take your own life? This was a real
Yeah.
rock bottom moment for you.
Yeah. So after a lot of violence and sexual violence, I hit a stage where, so my children's father, he tried to kill me. And after that, he just kept coming back to violate me. And I would stay quiet for my children, because of my children. And there was a day where I hit this space where it was just like I sat on a sofa with a bottle and my pills and my phone and just thinking, I just can't live this violation anymore. And maybe everybody would be better off. And maybe my kids will be better off if I'm not here. So that definitely was one of my very, very rock bottom moments. Yeah.
So, Amy, you were telling us about that day, your 26-year-old self, you had your children, and you've got two, is that correct, your children?
Yeah, I've got two children.
Yeah, brilliant. And you were saying that was the day that you were sitting on the sofa And did you say you had some medication there or something that you was thinking about
Yeah,
taking your
I had a
life?
bottle of vodka and I had some pills and I had my phone just so that I could phone somebody or send a message to one of my friends and just say, before my kids see it, come and do something.
Right. Okay. And then, sitting here listening to that, I mean, that is a real defining moment in your life. It's the real sort of wake up call moment. And, tuning into my guides here, working on a soul level, they're saying they felt almost like you reached out to them, that they felt that they were with you almost, feeling almost like this feeling of an out of body experience. So it feels like, on a soul perspective, that there was someone watching over you, because I can hear it and feel it right now. So did you feel that time that you had sort of that out of body experience, almost looking in at yourself or looking at your life, what was going on?
Yes, yes. It was like I could see myself sat in that space on the sofa. And then there was this light of some kind within, around me, something that prompted me to go, no, you can't do this.
Yeah.
You can't do this. And after that, I did actually move back to London. Um, and I had no idea at the time. So I know, because I know there's people out there that'll be like, those moments may not seem pivotal, but it was pivotal to me, completely pivotal. I didn't have any of the understanding that I have now, but those were the moments that shaped my transformation. Yeah, because they showed me something about myself.
But so let's take you back to that. I want to take you back because they're sort of saying, let's go back to that day, that moment in time, because it felt as if, like, if we use the terminology as a feeling like hitting rock bottom, that feels like it was like hitting rock bottom. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because in that situation, I felt so suffocated. I felt like there was no way out. There was nothing that I could actually do to get out of the situation that not only had I put myself in, but then I felt the guilt of the fact that I put my children in, and I felt ashamed, and there was humiliation and embarrassment. And it was like, well, what do I do with this? I've landed myself in the same situation that I didn't want to be in, which my parents had been in. And so I felt like a total failure. And those were the words used when I was younger anyway, that you're a failure and, all of this kind of thing. So all of it accumulated in that moment. And I felt such a deep level of shame and disgust at myself.
That seems quite harsh that it's almost like sort of hitting yourself over your head, that, feeling ashamed of the situation. You're a mother with two kids, you're in a toxic relationship. It's hardly the whole of your responsibility or the whole of your fault or whatever we want to call it. So what was that shame? Where did that come from?
I thought it was my responsibility. I took it all on board as I did this, somehow I did this. And at the time, and I look at my mental health, it was so fragile. The line for me is so thin that in that relationship, he'd made me believe that it was me. So I was in a very difficult place emotionally as well. So I was believing that this is my fault. I've created this situation. I can remember people sort of saying to me, well, you made your bed now, you got to lie in it.
Yeah.
There was the whole cultural aspect of it as well, where it's very much like, I can remember somebody saying to me, actually, my mom, she said to me once after he had beaten me up once, she went, well, maybe it's just your karma, maybe you hurt him in a past life. So, this is your your
Wow.
payback. So I felt
That's
like I created these situations. Yeah, like I
wow.
literally
That
felt
that
like I
that's
was in
tough
prison.
to hear that from your mother. Wow.
It really was. It really was. I mean, I can laugh at it now, but yeah, I was isolated. I was alone. I was 26. I was essentially in my mind mentally a child because I'd never dealt with any of the other stuff that had happened to me. I didn't know what to do.
You didn't know what to do and where to turn. You mentioned about the cultural stuff. Can you explain to us what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I, by religion, was brought up Hindu and come from a Indian Asian kind of community background, and was brought up in a situation where very much like the men were the thing that was looked after. My mom was very much about, my brother was a golden child, and like it was all about the men are better than the women. And I feel like a lot of the time she projected her stuff onto me the whole time, but it was very much like, God's always watching you and you're being judged, and bad things happen to bad people, and it's all about appearances. You can't tell people if you're going through like any kind of violence. Like my parents never told anybody. Like it was a secret when I was a child. I wasn't allowed to take that kind of outside. So I felt like it was a secret. And then if anybody found out, like I used to hide the bruises and everything, it was very much a keep it, keep a lid on it. It's not something you take out. So really the thing was, if you look okay, like if you've got your mask on, that's all that matters. What's going on in the inside is irrelevant. You don't tell people any of those things. Like I used to go to school after being beaten up or watching my parents having a crazy fight, and nobody had a single idea that that's what was going on in my life.
So it sounds like almost having to be the chameleon, like to change into different circumstances, different environments, or where to wear a mask to some degree.
Yeah,
right?
all of the time. I got very, very used to that. Very, very used to wearing this mask. Like that was me. Like when I look at photos of me and I see this smiling child, for example, that was always the mask. I was taught that. And even now, like I know there's certain people that can see through it, but my default even now is to just put the mask on and just go, yeah, I'm okay. Right. It's all good. Yeah.
So as someone who, I don't know your full background, we don't have these conversations kind of outside of this podcast. For me, I know you would have spoken to Anne about it outside of this. Just so I'm completely clear, so at 26, you were in a relationship with someone with domestic abuse going on at that time. And was that also happening in your childhood with your family situation? Is that correct?
Yes. So it started in my childhood. I witnessed it in childhood first. And it was, when I look at it now as well, it's like, so both of my parents as such were perpetrators, but my mum was the main perpetrator in the situation between my parents. So yeah, that's where it started. And it normalized it for me. So it just made it normal. This is just how relationships are. This is how people operate in relationships. They're painful. But the weird thing is, when I was a child, I can specifically remember thinking to myself, why do people get together and do stuff like this? Like, I never want to be in any of these situations. But it was the only thing I knew. And that's why I ended up in those situations, because it felt comfortable. Like it made sense to me almost because I knew it.
Yeah. It's like that phrase that we accept the love that we think we deserve, or we only accept the love that we are aware of and that we've seen before. So it's interesting to hear that you were modeled this type of behavior as you were growing up, and then it kind of has resulted in going into these situations that also modeled this very familiar kind of love. And what's interesting is so many of us get to a point in our lives where we're like, although this feels comfortable, it doesn't feel right. And we get to this kind of, I don't understand. It's like this kind of cognitive dissonance where it's like we get to this point and we thought that was normal for us. We thought that was all okay, but your body's telling you different. Or you get this kind of just inner thing and you get to this crisis point, this rock bottom moment that you were explaining, that or you were on the sofa and you're like, that's it, I just can't do this anymore. So although you were kind of going through the familiar processes, there was something within you, there must have been something within you to get to this point that was like, maybe this isn't right. Maybe, like, how long did that process take you to realize? When was it when you started to realize, oh, I'm repeating cycles? Oh, wait, because to get to rock bottom, that is like a moment. But was there moments before that you were like, maybe I should seek a conversation with someone? Like, what was your thought process leading up to that rock bottom moment?
Absolutely no conversation. Okay. Again, the cultural conditioning was very much like, you can't talk to people about, you can't tell people that this is what's going on for you. Like that would be awful to admit those things, to say those things. And at that time, I really didn't know where the help was. Like I had no idea that any kind of help existed. I didn't really even know what therapy or counseling or any of that was. So historically, and it's one of my ways of being, and I embrace it a lot more now, but I very much I took everything inside internally. So I turned everything inwards and then sort of would take it out on myself and would sit and ruminate with myself. But the outward expression of it was very, very difficult because I judged myself so much. It was inevitable that I would think that other people were just going to judge me and tell me I'm being stupid. And it was already horrific for my family in that, oh my God, you've gone off and you're with somebody that's not the same religion.
Okay, I'm listening to you as well, Amy, but I was just hearing that there was a moment because they heard it. Sorry, so
you can't lie to a psychic, Amy.
It's funny. No, I know this is what you're saying. I totally get it. Sorry. But they said there was a moment when you knew you deserved something better than this, and that was the moment. So it's in between that sort of, like they talk about past lives and when we die and everything. It's the life in between. So it's in that breath. So they're saying to me, there was a moment when they were listening to you. So it's interesting because they're sort of saying to me, I think someone just said to me, we are the soul keepers. We heard your soul. There was something internally within you that said, no, I deserve something better, or I deserve something different to this. There was something there, they said. Something came in at some point. So on that very moment, there was something that came in and you didn't do it. You didn't take your life. Can you take yourself back to moment? Can you recall that? Is there anything there that you can think of?
In the moment I wouldn't have known it, but there was something that said, no, you can't do this. Like I had taken a couple of the pills already, and it was just like, then there was a light, a something that just was like, this is not your story. Like this, you can't do this. You can't do this to yourself, because this is not how it ends. Like there was just something that was like, this is not how we're ending this. And this is not who you are. This is not who you are. So yeah, there was something that completely stopped me dead in that moment. Yeah.
And in that moment, what was the next thing then? So you had this, I'm going to say epiphany, or you had this moment of realization, and you've lived your life so far up to this point where it's like, I can't talk to anyone about this, and what is counseling and what is therapy, and like, I can't speak to friends and all of this and family. So what was the next step? So you were sitting there, and then what?
The next step, I actually then took my children and came back to London. I was living in Birmingham at the time. Literally.
But that very day, so you were on the sofa.
Yeah.
But you picked up all your stuff and just went, or you got up and you took a breath? Or?
No, it was a process of like leaving from there. But I feel like I almost, what's coming to me now, it feels like I almost like gained a couple of layers of armor to get through what I needed to get through to get me out of there. In that moment, and to focus on making the story different. At that time, I'm going to be honest and say that I didn't really do it for me. Like the motivation wasn't me, because I didn't like myself very much. The motivation was my children. It was like, they cannot live this. I can't do to them what happened to me. I just can't do that to them. Like they cannot live the same story. I have to try and make it different for them. So that was my motivation at the time. It was point blank my children. It was like, no, because I couldn't do it for me at the time. Like, I'll be honest, like I at the time, it was like, I don't really care what happens to me, but I can't do this to them. And also, if I leave them, they're left with this person that is abusive. What's going to happen to them?
Did
you give any warning or anything like this? Or did you literally quick, go? I don't know. What was the story?
Yeah, it was like, quick, go, quick. I get out of here. Just go, just get out. And I wouldn't know it at the time, but obviously like my team were around me, things were happening spiritually that I had no idea of at the time. I just felt this motivation that I needed to get my kids out of there. I needed to get away from there as quickly as I possibly could. And it was a few months, and it was like I had moved all the way back to London with my children, because it was just I guess when I look at it now, it's just, there's this courage that runs through me, which I couldn't see then at all. But I feel like there's been that warrior fight all the way through, even when I haven't been able to kind of connect to it as such.
It's a bit like an animal instinct in a way, isn't it? I suppose if you wouldn't jump into the fire, sort of that protective mode, maybe sort of coming in, not just as you say with your children. It was really that's what kept you going. What you did for them, that innate sort of thing as being a mother. And I think sometimes when that comes up in those who are mothers or who are hearing this story, it's like that got to protect them, so that mother hen mode. But by saying that, it makes me feel, then did you then look at, you felt that you had to be there for your children, you didn't want them to repeat the cycle. Did you then, how was your relation, or how was your thoughts and feelings about your own parents then when this happened? It's like that, what you'd gone through as a child. So did you have any thoughts around that, you were doing something different for your children, but what was going on? What was your inner child saying to you, sort of thing, of what had happened to you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think I put those things together. It wasn't until I really did my degree that I actually even admitted to myself that it was abuse. I didn't have the words. I just felt like this was how life is. And actually, lots of people go through this kind of thing. And I'd created the issue because everything was inward. So it was like, oh my God, obviously your very existence creates issues like this, because that's what I'd been told as a child, that my mum and dad used to fight because of me. So then very much taken that forward as a thing that, like, I create this in the environments I go into. So I wasn't in a place where I could sit there and go, these things are terrible and they shouldn't be happening to me, because I just wasn't of that mindset then. Right. It just felt like this is a part of my life. This is how it is because I somehow created this. But I need to get them out of there. It's not fair on them.
How old were your kids when you left?
They were 1.5. My daughter was 1.5 and my son was 4.
Okay. And how old are they now, roughly?
My son is 25 and my daughter is 21.
For those people that might be in similar situations and they're thinking, what's going to happen? What about if I leave? What's going to happen to my kids? Do you ever speak to your kids about this? Is there an open conversation around this? What's been said?
Yes. For me, especially doing the work around the domestic abuse and everything, it was very, very important for them to understand that this was about keeping myself safe and keeping them safe, and having that conversation that, we don't have to stay in those kind of relationships, because that conversation never happened with me. I did what I could at that point. I did what I knew to kind of, how can I make this different when I don't really know how to do it? Right. So it was like I had to fit into being honest, because I actually did go to court and the kid's dad was sent to prison. And that was like a pivotal turning point for me. That was the moment where I actually stood up and was like, no. No. And I did tell my son, my daughter was too young at the time, but I did sort of say to him, like, this is the process I went through. This is where I was, because I had to go to court in Birmingham. And I've been open about that journey because my kids experienced it. It was me being there and experiencing it as a child, and nobody saying like this shouldn't be happening or relationships don't work like this. That's what led me to kind of getting into abusive and toxic situations, relationships, friendships. So I didn't want the same for them. It's always been an open conversation for us. Always.
If you could feed back some information or advice to yourself at that particular moment of time, I'm a strong believer in being able to speak up and down timelines, being able to speak to yourself in a particular time when you're finding things tough, and also you're kind of feeding stuff to your higher self or your future self. I'm a big believer in this. And I always take these conscious moments too. And it's a practice that I do in every moment of my life. Whenever I'm feeling more kind of confident in myself, I feed back information to who I was at that moment in time and say, hey, it's going to be okay. And, and that's what I say to myself. Do you do that now? And what do you say to that 26-year-old in that situation?
Love yourself. Know that you were always worth more. Know that this was part of your story. Right, to get through. Like, hold on was always the thing. Hold on, look at yourself, love yourself, like, be there for yourself. Like, you will get through this, and things will change, and you will be the one that can change it, because you can.
Okay, something just came in, and I'm just like, I'm hearing you and listening to you, and it's like, did that affect you then as your personality, or how you did things in life? Like, did you become the people pleaser from this? Because because they just said people pleaser. I'm like, okay, I'll just throw that in, but I can't just say that like that. So
you just throw the word people pleaser. Do catch it. I mean, people pleasing is something that I caught onto. I'd say I caught it very, very early, because I didn't feel loved as such. My way of trying to get love was always to try and do what other people wanted me to do, and I would go way out of my way for people, like do all sorts of stupid things and put like myself second to everybody. It's like, if I can be out in the world and please everybody, I mean, even on the streets, like the amount of times I would say somebody bumped into me, I would be the one saying sorry for being in the way. Yeah, I mean, the level of people pleasing, really, really high, and it's something that I manage in the now.
Okay, sorry, they just said something. I'm wondering, like, Yeah, the people pleaser. But do you was you abusive to yourself through
Yeah.
this period of time? Right. And what shape and form did that take?
Gosh, so many different shapes and forms. Well, I was physically abusive towards myself. So I used to self-harm a lot, but that started when I was quite young. Eating disorders, body image. I was just cruel to myself, very, very cruel to myself. Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing that up, because they showed me the self-harming, and I think that there's something there that they're saying to me about what people don't seem to understand. There's many shapes and forms of self-harming. So there's that physical cutting, or drug
Yeah.
taking, or alcohol taking, even food supplement with
Yeah.
chocolate or whatever it is. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So the same, okay, thinking the reason they just said that, because I was like, okay, where are we going with this? And they just said, because so people can identify with this, so that those out there that are listening to this can start identifying, sort of saying, oh my God, that's what I do, or yeah, that makes sense, that's what I do. And maybe haven't put two and two together yet. So this is important because you've been on a journey, you've lived, you've been through this, and that the work that you do now. So how did you take that leap of faith? What's the leap that you did, the next bit? So you've gone through all that, but I'm just wondering, Rebecca's smiling at me, and I'm like, I don't know if that was going to be her next question. But I'm wondering, how did you get from all that drama and that turmoil? I mean, that is real, catalyst of change. And some people, when they're actually in that thick of going through that drama, and they feel that there's no return, or what do they do next, it's like actually they don't realize that is the precious moment. It's not got the bells and whistles and beautiful sparkling lights and an angel appears. That's not really necessarily that moment. It's like it's when you're going through all that deep crap that shapes and formulates you. I always say that if you were a caterpillars don't have nerve endings, so they don't experience the pain of change, but humans do. So it's like, how did you do that leap? What was the next jump? What was the next thing that happened to you?
The next thing was happening. So when I moved back here, it was divine intervention, I guess. When I moved back here, firstly, that brought some peace to move back here. And it was frightening to move back to London with my children. But I didn't understand the healing process or anything. And I was, at the time, what I thought, I was very, very broken. So I was taking laxatives at the time. That was part of the way that I self-harmed.
Yeah.
And I was very, very isolated. And then one day, a leaflet dropped through my door, and it had an introduction to counselling on it, which was like a 10-week course. And I was like, and I tried so many different things. This is the other thing of my journey. I'd been to lots of different colleges, tried lots of different things, nothing fit. And I just thought I was stupid, and that I couldn't do academia. It wasn't for me because I'd failed my A-levels and everything. And I thought, oh, that would be interesting. I don't really know what counselling is, but obviously it was guided at the same time, and I had no idea. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go and try that. It was like £110 for that 10-week course, and it changed my life. That was the catalyst, because I finally had no choice but to see me, because I was of the thinking, I'm going to go in there, it's about fixing other people and helping other people. It's out here. It wasn't out there. It went straight inside. And I remember writing, I had to journal the 10-week process. And I remember so much coming out of that, and the tutor talking to me, and a lot came out about my dad and my mom and all this kind of thing. And then they were like, we're actually converting the diploma program into a degree program. Would you be interested in doing it? It'd be great for you. And that they were the stepping stones of coming back home to myself, of finally like everything shifting in my world, because I had to see myself differently when I sat in that circle. I had no choice.
It's like the mirror being held up, isn't it? And it also is like we have to get to the stage where we're on our knees. That's when we can pick ourselves back up, and that's what it sounds like. And like, I know there's terminology that you use now. You talk about the divine and seeing the light and everything else, but going back to that period of time, and there's some people that will hear this and they may not be at that stage where, because reflectively you can look back at that and you can say, those were those pivotal moments. But I'm sure at those times that you didn't feel like that at all, did you?
Just, it all felt like a fluke, right? It was all an accident as such, is what it felt like, these little things that were happening. But they were prompts, like, go and do something different.
And I knew internally there was something in me that was like, okay, something different has to happen now. Like, you can't carry on just the way that you were carrying on, because what about your children? Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to kind of create this life? And I had to, and literally I was in isolation, apart from having like my brother and my mum around me. I had lost all of my friends through the abusive relationship, everything. I was on my own with these two little children. And it was just like, now what happens? Like, now what do you do? Move forward. How do you not move forward just being this abused woman?
How did you drop that narrative?
The abused narrative. That's through and I'm not like a lot of healing, a lot of years of working on myself, because it suited me at the time to stay in the narrative of the victim. That was where I was at, right? So it was like, I'm the victim of all these things and I can't help it. This is how my life was. So this is why I'm like this.
And it's interesting. Go on.
Yeah, go on.
It was interesting what you were saying, because it sounds like from listening to what you guys were saying, there was kind of incremental building up of this self-abandonment theme, self-abandoning what you needed throughout the time. But it's not just overnight. You're so used to self-abandoning, it leads into that kind of people pleasing and this type of stuff here. But what was interesting, the terminology that you used just then, and you used it as well in your bio, which was about coming back home to yourself. And what's interesting to me is this idea of home and what actually is home. And listening to your story on this podcast, you're saying, well, my experience of home, maybe, if I don't want to put words into your mouth, but wasn't safe. Like, it wasn't home and safe and comfy. And so what does home mean to you now? And how have you started to come back home to yourself when you didn't have that blueprint?
I love this question.
Good.
And I was reflecting on this yesterday.
Okay.
Because no home ever felt safe for me, and I always looked for home outside of me.
Yep.
I was looking at the environment, looking at the people I was with, and it was always an outside thing. And it was through this journey, as I've been through this journey, as I've committed to myself, as I've started to get to know who I am, build that bond, started to like myself, started to come back into alignment with all of me. But particularly the spiritual part has helped to kind of allow me to see, particularly what I've been through over the last couple of years as well, that actually home is within me. It's that building up of faith in particular. As I started to trust myself, then I found the safety, the security, the comfort within me that I never found anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I always searched for it outside of me. So it was that taking those very small steps, and they were small steps. It didn't just happen in a leap. And it's a committed practice, right, of just going inward.
And trust.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Yeah, because I didn't trust myself at all.
Trust that you can keep yourself safe, they just said.
Yeah, that I've got my back. Yeah, because I've had it all the way.
You spoke about how your kids were one of the things that really kept you on this path, and kind of with the grit and determination. Would you have been able to do that journey and have the kind of the grit? Oh, I don't know the best word for it. But would you have been able the courage? Yeah, anything, tenacity. Would you have that go? Would you be able to go through that without the kids being around, or were there other things that were kind of anchoring you to this journey?
No, I very fully own, when I think about writing my story, which I do often, I think to myself, I know that divinely they were put in my life so that I would get out of that situation at that time. That was part of the reason that they were there at that time, because I wouldn't have done it for me. I think I would have just allowed myself to give up and give in to the whole thing. Because I fully am I feel very, very blessed and very, very grateful that they were placed in my life at the time they were, because I wouldn't have done it for me, no.
And it's an interesting conversation, because Anne, I'm sure you can kind of speak to this as well, how these kind of soul contracts that come in, and this is obviously personal points of view rather than any kind of modality that I follow, but those kind of soul pods, those soul contracts that come in at certain times of your life, and it's, again, Amy, it's like not feeling guilty for going, well, I'm putting this on my kids. It's actually part of their journey as well. For example, Anne going through her near-death experiences and that impacting on me when I was 7, being her child. It's like, well, that's my journey. So it's interesting, the views around this.
It's funny because I was waiting to see if Amy was going to say that, because I was hearing that and they're talking to me in my ear, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to wait. And they're like, okay, but sometimes I have to, like, almost comes out. But you're totally right. The soul pods that we're born into, the families, it's like you have the choice. Do you run away from them, or do you accept that they're there for whatever purpose and what they're serving? And it's always like to reflect back on the soul pods that we're born into, a bit like, Amy, the family that you were born in with your parents, a similar background to myself, with all the domestic violence and stuff. We look at that, and then for so many years I was, blaming my parents. And then as I moved forward, and only because I ended up, trying to become a therapist and looking back and reflecting and then being quite spiritual, I realized, oh, now I understand why I was put in that family, why that happened. This repeating cycle that goes back ancestry through the women and everything else. And then looking at the children and everything else that happened. So, yeah, I mean, Rebecca, you're right. It's the soul pod that we're born into that actually creates us who we are. Okay, I think they just said, no one's going to like this when I say this. It's a bit like our children are our biggest teachers, and our parentage, because not that we would say as a human, they didn't teach me anything. It's more about actually the lessons taught you something to create who you are now as the person. So we're not giving credit to those individual human beings. Actually, you're giving credit to the experience, to what has made you who you are. And actually, as we know, your soul signed up for you to go through another lesson, another layer of soul growth. So no human is going to turn around and say, yes, please, I'm going to take that abuse, I'm going to do this, please, because I want to learn so much about it. It's not going to be like that. But yeah, you're right. You're the observation's really well done there. It's good. Yes, spot on.
Interesting. Amy, you described your journey after this. So when you were 26, and then you described the journey after this was an 18-year long, and it might have changed now because the years always change.
19.
But okay, 19-year long. You called it a mind-altering journey into self-mastery, healing, and personal transformation.
Yes.
Why would you call it that?
Because this is like version 2.0 of Amy. I honestly didn't believe, like, it's one of those things where people say those words and you're like, oh my God, that's not real. But I couldn't have imagined, every day I probably sit here at some point and go, I couldn't have imagined at a certain point in my life feeling the way that I do about myself, feeling the way that I do about life, the way that I've been able to master thinking and emotion and the regulation and growing my consciousness and my awareness and really being able to be present and have an open heart is unbelievable to me, even now, that I'm able to do that after everything that I've experienced and the things that I've gone through, because I honestly did not think it was possible. It has been a dedication to myself and my journey, which in itself shows me that some level I very much did care about moving myself to a different space, even when I couldn't, like, I don't know, stay out here physically. That something motivated me deep within. And also there's another thing that I feel like I'm my guinea pig. I feel like I'm a person that when I learn something or I go somewhere, it's like I have to embody it and understand it for me to experience it at a very deep level, for me to then go out and support anybody else with it. So like I am my biggest guinea pig, and this is an experiment. So I've gone for it.
Right, there's something that just came in, and I'm like, I'm having a conversation with them, like, do we need to mention this? And they said, well, yes, you do. And I'm like, oh my God.
Of course we do.
Because that wasn't just it. As your journey, as you've gone on, you've been through something recently, and actually, again, you were brought to your knees, they said, and they're sure that the experiences that you had all those years ago have helped you, but you were brought to your knees. I mean, witnessing that myself as the human, but they're all, and I'm like, do we need to mention this? Because friend Anne is going, don't need to bring that up, don't need to bring that up. And they're going, no, bring it up, because it's like, people often think that it's maybe just one thing that happens to us, but it's not.
It's never linear, ever linear.
No,
and you've grown so much, and there is so much more growth. They're really saying to me that you're gestation, you're transforming even more. So there's so much, they're looking, they're going, tell her there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to worry about. But there's like now moving forward. But again, recently there was a major shift for you, wasn't there, in your life?
Yeah, massive. Like that was that. So over the last three or 4 years, everything, my whole life just fell apart. All of it. all of it, like in every single way. Yeah. And like where I am now, I am thankful because it showed me where I was not loving myself. I had kind of just gone, I accept that my life is just going to be like this. I'm going to be in this not very loving relationship that's quite toxic. I'm going to do this work with somebody else where I'm kind of minimizing who I am and I'm giving them the credit for it at the same time. I'm living in this space that isn't really for me, but I just have to suck it up because that's how life is. And I had kind of maybe hit a plateau. I really wanted to expand, and it was like things were holding me back. And it's like all of that had to fall away for me to get to this bit,
To
to
restructure.
really embody myself and give myself the permission to be all that I am right now, because I wasn't giving myself that permission.
Okay, and they just said, so there are layers of ourselves that it takes us to go through many different trials and tribulations. Like we go through some and then we're like, yep, no, I've got this. And many people will listen to this. And, you know, as a therapist, I have many clients go, no, I've worked on this already. And you're like,
No.
there's another layer. You have to go a little bit deeper this time, like the epidermis, they said, so the skin layer. So going down deeper and deeper. And so this previous experience, I mean, literally, you were brought to your knees. It was like, we talk about home is where the heart is to some degree, but you'd had that. Everything was pulled away from you, wasn't it?
Yeah, everything. So within a period of, I don't know, even like a year or so, it was like my 15-year toxic relationship ended, and it ended in a 24-hour period. It was just like, can't do this. Next day, it's over. But he was also the only dad that my kids had like allowed in as the dad. So there was all of that with it as well. Then my home kind of crumbled completely. And I know it wasn't the place I was supposed to be, but it was our home. And for my kids, it was a massive thing. It was the most stable home they'd had. My finances totally crumbled. And the two businesses, the work that I was doing, totally crumbled as well, with the 16-year relationship with my business partner at the time, who for all intents and purposes for me was like, you know, the closest person I really had in my life at the time. So all of it. And I don't like change. It was a little, let's just say, and it was the holding on that was causing more pain.
Yes, they just went yes very loudly.
Yeah, it was the holding on. So at that point, you know, there comes a point where it's like, okay, all of this must be happening for a reason, because the starting point of that is often I'm a victim in this and all this horrible stuff is happening and I can't cope. And, you know, through the darkness was where I saw myself the clearest. Because that's the place where our light shines the brightest, is in the darkness.
Why was you holding on for so long in those situations, and what was the turning point?
I held on because I thought, you know, you just have to put up, like, I'm not going to lie, the way I used to see it was like, you've done all this horrible stuff before and you've been in horrible places before. Like, how can you think that your life is going to like be so much better than that? Also, I have a lot of dreams, and a lot of people around me were constantly like, oh my God, you're such a dreamer. Like, those things aren't going to happen. Those things aren't going to happen. Like, stay in your lane, stay in this little box. You know, it was really quite minimizing. So then it was like, what was the question?
No, it's good. So you were in these situations and you were saying you were holding on. I was asking, why were you holding on? And then what was that turning point?
Yeah, I could see, you know, Rebecca, it's really funny because like when I really looked at the nuances of all of it, again, it was the layering, right? It's like, I thought I dealt with this layer and this layer and this layer. And it's like, oh yeah, I've dealt with all the cultural stuff and blah, blah, blah. But then I saw the depths of it. It was like, no, I'm holding on because in my culture as such, in my family, it's like, it's all about, you know, you've got this, you know, happy little couple and you've got everything stable and it should look like this and you should have your house. And so I was playing to all of the shoulds, but that's not what I wanted. Right? And it was that realization slowly where it was starting to go, are these things that you really wanted though? These things that you're letting go of now? Is this really how you wanted it to be? It isn't. So let go, because otherwise how are you going to get what you actually want?
Okay, it's interesting because they just turned around and said, sorry to jump in because I'm listening to them in the background. I was like, oh, okay. And they sort of said, sometimes the shapes and forms of who we think we want to become or who we want to see or how we want to see ourselves, that changes as well. There was something that happened over the last couple of years for yourself that there was something about needing or wanting change, how you saw yourself or what you saw your future to be like. This is what I'm just heard. There was something at some point how you wanted your future to be like. I think they said you had all these dreams and you were putting it out there and people were like rubbishing them and everything. And they said a note to everyone out there: do not share your dreams with anybody because they are going to rubbish them down unless you know there are your cheerleaders, because of like they can only come from their own mindset. But there was something there that your dreams, you put them out enough times. There was something there that then there was something about your character of who you wanted to become, because that's where you're at right now, isn't it? There's more that you want to come. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I minimize myself for other people. Like, other people told me how it should be, and I listened to that very, very much. I guess I've had this thing around authority all my life as well, because that was sort of drummed into me that you should listen to people. But yeah, like there was moments where I would sit there and think to myself, well, that's really stupid. Like for me, the dream is going out there and holding these retreats and being on like in these massive like speaking events where people are joining together and they're opening their heart and they're finding their joy and their love and living the best life possible. And when I tried to put that out there to people, they were like, don't be stupid. Like that's you're not going to do that. That's not going to work. And it was just like, and then I would go into that space of self-doubt and like imposter syndrome and kind of thinking, am I just being stupid? Like, is this just not a possible thing? This is just me kind of dreaming and, you know, all this kind of thing. So I would very much just be taken in by all of the other people's insecurities and their fears and their projections onto me.
They're not your audience. They just said they weren't your audience.
No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah, I was literally just speaking to someone about this morning, about how you have like an inner knowing about what your dreams are and what you feel like you're here to do. There's always these seeds that have been planted. It was like that, is it Elizabeth Gilbert, that book that was like, I think it's Big Magic, is one of my favorite books, that these seeds have been planted within you, these treasures, and you've just got to kind of find them, but also accept them in yourself. And I think a lot of it is self-acceptance and saying, well, actually, this keeps coming up. Okay, instead of saying it's not right or not normal, it's accepting it within yourself and going after it and knowing, is it my dream that's the problem? Is it me that's the problem? Or is it the people that I'm surrounding myself with that the problem? And if I can find people that also will resonate with this dream, then maybe it's not the dream. Maybe it's the people that I'm surrounding myself with.
Yep.
You know, it's like that kind of analogy of the plant where if you speak nice to the plant, it will grow very well. And it's like if you're surrounding yourself with people that put you down always, you're going to start questioning your dreams, start questioning yourself, and you feel yourself contracting. And that feeling of contracting is not a natural state for a human being to be in. We're naturally expansive. So the people that are right for you and the life that's right for you is an expansive lifestyle. It's an expansive feeling rather than this contraction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the word I would use, Rebecca. I felt like I was contracting myself, right? Rather than expanding, I was going the other way. Like, what am I doing to myself? Like,
it's like a core signpost to say there's an alarm bell here, like something needs to change. So anyone listening to this that has this contraction, whether it's in work, whether it's in family, whether it's in partnership, wherever it is in your area of life, contraction will make you feel stuck. Contraction will give you that signpost that something's not right. Don't ignore that. You are here to be expansive in all areas of your life, and that is out there. It's possible.
But you've got to feel that way about yourself. This is the thing. This is like when you're in that moment, it's like that you know, that frustration or whatever it is that comes up for you. It's like knowing those are the feelings to say, right, no, you've got to do what you feel you've got to do. You know, you have those moments in life and go, right, no, if this is my life, I have to take it back and have to do what I need to do for myself now. This is the thing. But you've got to, it's the hardest thing if you've been putting yourself down for so many years, or how you see yourself, or if you're the people pleaser or the imposter syndrome. You've got all these. It's very hard then to take that step and say, right, this, well, it can be quite difficult to say, right, no, okay, I feel reconstructed within this, I now need to step out of it. That's the biggest moment, and that's the no going back. It's like just jump, feel the fear and do it anyway. That's it.
Absolutely. Amy, I've got a couple of questions for you, which is, there's a constant theme of love. When you speak, when you're writing your bio, when you're doing your sessions, there's this constant theme of love, whether it's self-love, love for others, love for everything, love of the body, whatever it is, the theme of love. What does the word love mean to you?
Oh my goodness, it is everything to me. I feel like it's been the running thread throughout my whole life. Like it's that openness. It's hard to put into words because I guess we haven't been given the words to describe stuff enough, but it's that feeling of going into this world with this heart that's open and giving people that experience of love when they've not had it, maybe, but just being able to radiate it outwards, and meeting myself in that space of just this kind of embrace of, it's okay, like, live this life, live all of you, love all of you, like, embrace who you are and embrace those beautiful experiences and the people that come in, and grow, expand, be all of you, be unapologetic, express. Like, love to me is all of those beautiful kind of things that is just about the fullness of the experience of being here and being human, because being human means that I can feel that and I can give that and I can finally receive that for myself.
Right. You're sitting there, you're saying that. I was listening, but David came in and said something. You were saying a little bit earlier about soul pods, why members of families come in.
Yes.
And they said, straight away, they said, and that's where she was given her children, because as a mother, as a child, experiencing love, you experienced it on a certain level from your own parents.
Yeah.
And so there was that of, that was the sort of bringing me the feeling of not being able to go in, sort of what sort of love you received from your parents. And then they're saying, then you had your children, that was externally coming out from you, your heart opened up to them. So your heart was in protection mode to some degree. This is what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then they were saying when you had your children, it was like you did everything for your children. And so, as we know, love is something that you give and you receive. So that you, by having your children, they sort of said, this is the reason why you had your children, was so that you, as a mother to your children, because you hadn't experienced love yourself from your own parents, or in a certain way what they could only give you, you then received the love from your children. You then started to see that love was unconditional. It's unconditional love you receive from your children, and vice versa. They gave it back to you, gave it to them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's been the biggest theme of my life. I can remember being a kid and watching all these Bollywood movies, because that was the thing that we used to watch, and there was such a theme of unrequited love and love, all of this kind of thing in there.
Yeah.
So I love songs. That feeling that kind of erupts in me when love is just there. And for me, I feel like that's such a big part of who I am and what I take into this world and what I'm supposed to take forward into this world. It's just the most warming space to be, and loving myself and being able to really allow myself to feel it without the blocks to it now, without feeling like I have to protect myself from it. It's just like this warm, oozy, liquid kind of feeling in me all of the time. It's like felt, but I feel like it's because I felt the very opposite of it as well. Because there's a duality to it. I don't think I'd feel it in the way that I feel it now if I hadn't felt the despair, the darkness, and really allowed myself to feel it.
And can you give that to yourself unconditionally now, they just said?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wait, yes. Oh,
There's an acceptance of all of me, in whatever state I don't need to be in a certain state to like myself, see myself, love myself, which I often had to be. I'd have to see myself in a certain way or be a certain way or get the accolade from somebody else for me to then look at myself and go, oh. But now it's just I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I love you. And I look straight in the mirror and I'm completely naked and I stand there for a few minutes and just take in the marvel of all that I am, because this is such a gift.
I'm nodding because that's such a great practice. I love doing that. Standing in front of the mirror and just giving yourself the love that you want and you need, essentially. It's such a beautiful practice. And I was getting that from when I was asking you, what does love mean to you? Kind of key words there, like compassion for yourself, for others, I guess, acceptance as well as a key thing, and expansion. There's also this kind of idea of, I want to say optimism, hope, but kind of just warmth. It's kind of expecting, it's okay, just letting down your guard and just being open to receiving is really key, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you sit with that, I think when people finally really sit with that, and it's the asking of the questions, what difference does it make if I go into the world with my heart closed or my heart open? The difference is that it's I am keeping a barrier to allowing these experiences in. If I've got those barriers and the protection and the armor, and it's like opening that has really allowed me to connect to life, to nature, to people. And it's like, if this is an experiment as such, then I'm going to experiment slowly and carefully, because I can close it up if I want to, but I might as well go out there and have the experiment, right? And try it and see it and feel it.
I want to play devil's advocate. Sorry.
Go on. Do it.
Not that I'm getting information from the devil when I say that. Let me just say that, right? No.
Okay.
The question was, or not the question, but the statement was now that the love is about feeling vulnerable and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and open to others and allowing others to come in a sense of loving you. And they're saying, and next is the partnership, next is the romantic partnership. Then, you know, people do so many different levels and layers of loving themselves and working on love. And then the partnerships come in. It's like, how much do you allow that person to love you? How much do you allow them to come in? And then that's one of the biggest ones. They just said this to me and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't want to say that. But it is about then, because the other person we allow in romantically obviously is going to trigger stuff off inside of us. It's going to look at how, you know, sensitivities within us and vulnerabilities and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, I'm throwing that into the air. That's what I just said. Sorry.
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Like for me, like working with people, and I'd love to work with people on this more. It's kind of like, okay, and so what? So what? So I make myself vulnerable. Like sitting here is me being vulnerable. And I know there's lots of people that go, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't. It's like, and so what? Like, I think it's the idea. We don't question the ideas that we have in our head, these little thoughts that we hold. But as soon as you question it, you go, and so what? Like, what's going to happen to me? Like, really? What's going to happen to me? Like, we have to ask these questions. And that's why for me, like, so much of the work is ask the right questions. It's like, what's really true? Who told you that? Why can't I open my heart? Like, what's going to happen? There's this fear that, like, I don't know, something horrific is going to happen. Because when I really looked at it, it was kind of like, then what's going to happen if you open your heart to this person in front of you? What's going to really happen? What's really going to happen?
Love that.
Another key word that comes up with you is identity. And my question to you is, has your identity changed through your journey into love? And I can also ask that the opposite way around. Has your ability to love changed through your journey into deepening your sense of identity?
Yes.
Love and identity.
Love and identity. Yes, absolutely. I love being who I am, and I used to hate living inside me was painful and messy and horrible. I didn't like to be in this body. I didn't want to be in this mind. Like I just wanted to get as far away from myself as I possibly could. And I didn't know how to, and I say this often, but it's like, I didn't know how to be a human. I didn't know how to human. I didn't know how to live this life. I didn't know that I could actually have my own mind and do my own things. I felt very conditioned, very boxed in. And I felt like I had been put on this earth just to face all this crap. And that was my lot. And it was just painful and it was challenging. And that's how it was always going to be. And the world was a horrible place. That was my identity before. That's how I would have identified myself. And I'd say that's kind of really, really flipped with my ability to love, because there is so much truth in we can only truly love others in the way that we love ourselves. To me, I found the truth in that. And I used to really struggle with statements like that because I was like, what are you trying to say, that I love my kids in that way? Is instantly where I would go. But now I can see from this place that, yeah, I love them with a need. I love them with the need for them to validate my existence.
Now, since love and identity seem so intertwined together, and you now working so much in self-love and transformation and soul journeys, what are some practices people can embody today to move them closer to love and therefore identity?
See yourself, like be with yourself, acknowledge yourself, get to grips with yourself. We do not have relationships with ourselves. We are not close to ourselves. We have been taught to kind of disassociate from ourselves. For me, it's like start small, start right now, acknowledge yourself in this moment, right here, right now. Just go, hi, I'm whatever your name is, right? Hello, how are you? Because then we have a sense of, hello, I exist, right? We say hello to all the other people we meet, but we don't acknowledge our own existence. So start by just acknowledging your existence and just be real, really real about where I am right now. It doesn't matter how you feel about yourself right now. It's just like, but get real with it. Like I had to get real with, okay, I really am not liking myself in the space that I'm in, but that's okay. Because once I know where I'm at, then I can create movement with that. But it's really about just being okay with wherever you are and whoever you are being right now. Like love is about being okay and having that acceptance that, yes, there may be times where I'm in total darkness, but that's okay. So like just start to see yourself. And if you can't physically look in the mirror and see yourself, start just by that acknowledgement of yourself. Hi, I'm Amy. I exist. I'm here. I'm real. You know, I'm on a journey. Like start there and start by doing that every morning. When you wake up in the morning and you're in bed, good morning, good night before you go to sleep, because that just starts that relationship with yourself, right? And it's in that building blocks of those relationships. We don't just jump straight into, you know, love in a relationship. We get to know each other. It's like, this is about getting to know yourself again. So do it slowly and do it with compassion. Do it with curiosity. Be curious about who you are being every single moment of every day. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I'm wondering why I'm responding like that, rather than going, oh my God, why are you doing that? You're such a failure. You're terrible, terrible. Be curious. Be the child.
I think that is exactly what you're saying. It's the relationship with yourself. Have the relationship with yourself first. Treat yourself how you'd wish somebody else to treat you. And it's that by having that, building that relationship with yourself, like getting to know like your favorite food, your favorite music, having fun, being in the childlike moment. Like, you know, I've started doing roller skating and stuff like that. It's like finding yourself through those activities, living life to the full that you want to do. And I think you're so right. I mean, I get clients now that, you know, I get them to do post-it notes, because the first thing they do when they're feeling naked, when they go in front of their full-length mirror, they go, oh, look, my bum's too big, or I don't like this, or my saggy boobs, or whatever it is. And what I've said to quite a few of my clients is actually on the post-it notes, because these are what you're thinking about yourself, this is what's playing out in your body, then why don't you then like, oh, I love my nipples, or I love my hands, or I love my hair, or I, you know, and put them on post-it notes and stick it on your mirror, so you focus more on that and building up that relationship. So yeah, with all the identity and love, it makes so much sense. And then others start to see you through your own eyes as well, because that's another thing of how you see yourself. Like, you create your own reality, and then you're inviting some of that in. Whereas if you focus on that side of you, what you do love about yourself, it is then, you know, others will start to see that more, and your reality starts to change totally.
Yeah, completely.
You know what I love about this is that it is a really important practice to do. And I've just kind of written a note here from what you guys were saying, that it's such a rebellious notion to acknowledge your own existence in the universe when you've been self-abandoning for so long. So I encourage anyone listening to this to just be a little bit rebellious today and acknowledge your own existence in the universe, simply by saying exactly what Amy just said, good morning. It's such a rebellious act when you've been ignoring yourself for so long. Even if you don't want to stand in front of the mirror naked, just stand in front of the mirror clothed and say, I see you, like I'm here, I'm in the universe, because we are all here and we all own our space in the universe. Go and take up space, whether it's just a little bit today, like good morning, and a little bit more the next day. Just take up space, breathe in deeper, expand your belly, take up space, wiggle your arms around, take up that space, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely take up that space. And that's the thing, right? I tried to contract so much. It's like, oh my God, I can't take up space. That's how it was. So, yeah. And it is that. And it's that lovingly taking each step, starting just to see yourself different. But it's also that thing of like, there's a commitment to that, right? It's like, I'm committing. And I feel like this is the stumbling block for people. A lot of people, it's like, I'll show up once and I'll do this thing once. But it's like, how do you really want to be cherished? How do you want to be loved? How do you want to be honored and respected? How do you want to be heard and witnessed? Like, you're not going to receive that from anybody else until you can give yourself that. And how would you know how it feels if you're not giving it to yourself? How would you
Yeah.
know what it's like for somebody else to cherish you or love you or honor you or even listen to you wholeheartedly if you can't give that to yourself?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that. And that's what a lot of the work you do now, isn't it? As the
Yeah.
transformational coach and stuff, what you do now with clients. I absolutely love that with Odyssey, that you're working there alongside us, that, you know, you're building some programs that we're going to be putting onto Odyssey, and all the work that you do as that, you know, transformational coach. You've been there, you've walked in those shoes, you know, you have the training, you're there. So it's absolutely amazing, the life-changing effects that you're having on others.
And what I love about this is we were talking earlier about soul pods and parents and kids and all of this stuff. And we're never just parents to our own kids. I mean, I don't have kids at the moment, but we're still teachers for other people. We're still guides for other people. So what's so good about these podcasts is that people are listening to your story, and we know that you're going to be attracting different people in different soul pods. In human design, we call it fractals. You're going to resonate with different people, and it's like you've become this guide in that love process, in that love and identity process. And we started this podcast by speaking about your rock bottom moment, and those rock bottom moments are those moments of awakening. So they need to happen. They're dreadful to go through, but they are moments of awakening and up leveling. And we started there for a reason, so people that are going through similar things can really resonate with you, or people that can resonate with your experience and journey. And I love how we've worked through this podcast and ended in a place where we're ending on, I love being me and I believe in me. That's in your bio, and I love it. It's kind of, you've gone from, I wanted to take my life and I don't want to take up any space, to I love being me and I believe in me. So
Yeah,
important.
and I'm fully taking up my space.
Definitely own it. It's been such a lovely conversation today, and thank you so much for taking your time to be on the podcast with us. I hope people listening now know Amy's journey a little bit better and have some real actionable tools that they can take away, and knowing that they're not alone in this. And if you are looking for help in any of this, you can always pop to our website and book a session with Amy, or jump on one of the free conversations that we have on the events and the membership site, or you can wait for the courses that will be launching very, very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. This was an utterly beautiful experience.
Thank you, Amy.
You're more than welcome.